Today we're going to talk about coping when life is anything but normal, life during a pandemic. And as many of you know, when the coronavirus hit, a lot of us felt like our lives were turned upside down. So what I want to talk about today is how we can adapt and cope during this difficult time. And actually, we are all adapting right now. Just with the fact that we're meeting together today virtually, it's a way we can still get together and be safe at the same time. So let's start with what is normal. I'd like you to just take a moment and describe your normal life. Think of what normal means to you. Keep in mind it's subjective to you, but most likely it did not include a pandemic, intense social and political unrest, and natural disasters happening all at once. Abnormal for most of us would include living through a pandemic, chronic situational uncertainty, fear, and anxiety, constant concern for your health, quarantine, staying at least 6 feet from others, wearing a mask, washing your hands frequently, constant worry about general safety, worrying about basic needs, food, shelter, and medical care, worrying about normal activities like transportation, grocery shopping, appointments, etc., widespread job insecurity and unemployment, personal and global financial concerns, and a constant focus on return to normal. So here we are 7 months later, still living through a pandemic, and at this point I think we can say that we're undergoing chronic stress. And under chronic stress, it's common to feel desensitized or numb to the situation or just in general, to be less concerned about COVID, also known as COVID fatigue, feeling restless or wanting and perhaps acting as if life was normal, to think you're not affected by what is happening in our world, although you are, or just increasing stress, anxiety, or depression. So we're actually affected by these stressors both directly and indirectly, directly through our health, finances, our socialization, and just disruption in our daily routines, and indirectly through changes in our social, economic, and functional infrastructures, which have been either modified or closed. And examples of these would be restaurants, stores, entertainment, houses of worship, gyms, transportation, etc. With all of this going on, I think it's important, to know that all of the stress that's happening is going to have an emotional impact on us. And just so you have an idea, for a baseline, before COVID, the prevalence of any type of mental illness hovered around 19% nationwide, with anxiety and mood disorders being the most common. Excuse me. A recent study just came out, however, that during COVID, the prevalence of depression was 3 times higher than before COVID, and that's pretty significant. Now, keep in mind, the percentage of 19% is about any mental illness. So that includes things like ADHD, eating disorders, schizophrenia, substance abuse, just to name a few. And just to really stress this idea, I've listed some figures here that were taken from the CDC. And this is data taken from September 2nd through the 14th. And over here, it lists the percentages of anxiety, depression, and people who endorse both anxiety and depression. And here, if you take a look at the national average, you'll see that that is significantly higher than our baseline prevalence of any type of mental illness at 19%. I've also listed here the New York average, and here you can see it's slightly higher than the national average. Now that actually makes sense if you remember that in the spring, New York City was actually at the epicenter of the coronavirus. Over here, I've also listed figures of the states that reported the highest percentage of anxiety and depression. And again, it's during that same time period, the beginning of September. And here, Oregon reports the highest rates of anxiety at 36.9%, which you can see is significantly higher than the national average. And this actually makes sense if you keep in mind that during that period of time, Oregon was also experiencing fires and a lot of violence. Louisiana reported the highest levels of depression and also people experiencing both anxiety and depression. And here again, you can see the figures are significantly higher than the national average. And this we can understand because during that period of time, not only were they facing the pandemic, but they were also experiencing a hurricane. So this is really just to stress how we are affected by what's happening around us. I want to stress that just to reinforce that these emotional reactions that we have to stressors are normal and actually to be expected. These emotions are normal human reactions. They tell us how we're doing and also what we need. They don't make you weak. It makes you human and potentially stronger. And it can guide you and motivate you to take action. So really what I want to enforce is that emotions are okay. What is important is what you choose to do with your emotions, because that is what makes the difference. With the level of stress people are experiencing, I thought I'd just review some common stress symptoms. And certainly this is not exhaustive, but it can include things like increased worry, agitation, irritability, anger, being short-fused, restlessness, general fatigue despite rest, difficulty concentrating, processing information, listening or forgetfulness, racing thoughts, overeating, undereating, or eating more comfort foods, muscle tension, headaches, shaking, sweating, increased or even new pain, insomnia or hypersomnia, feeling numb, withdrawing from others, not due to quarantine, irrational fears, and depersonalization, dissociation, or just feeling like you're out of your body. And perhaps some of these resonate with you. Since COVID, more people have been experiencing anxiety or panic attacks, even if they never felt them before. And the reason for this, if you understand the nature of panic attacks, they frequently occur when a person actually, right before it happens, they're not feeling anxious or they're not aware that they're anxious. It can happen sort of out of the blue, like when you're shopping or watching TV, or maybe even when you're sleeping. And the reason for this is that even though the things that are worrying you are not at the forefront of your mind, your brain is actively thinking about it and it's churning away. So when we don't pay attention to it, it eventually will find a way to come out. And as you can see through these common anxiety and panic attack symptoms, it tends to come out through our body. So with everything that's been going on in 2020, there's been a lot of talk and focus on return to normal. And while we all want to return to normal, and I know I certainly do, the constant focus on returning to normal can actually increase our stress. It highlights what's wrong and reminds us of the uncertainty of when we can actually return to normal. So in order to contain the stress, I encourage people to shift their focus from returning to normal to feeling as well as you can now. And the reason for this is when you give too much attention to your stress, it's like feeding your stress and it gets bigger and bigger, and eventually it becomes so overwhelming and you feel like you can't control it. So 2020 certainly has been a year of a lot of change. And change, whether it's desired or undesired, creates instability and therefore stress. Desired change, what I mean by that are things like going on vacation, getting married, or getting a promotion. And examples of undesired change could be a pandemic or getting sick or getting injured. So what happens, we look over here, when change occurs, the way we normally cope and respond to things becomes less effective. And when that happens, it creates an instability, which then causes stress for us. And we stay in this cycle unless we respond to the change. And the way we respond to change is by being very flexible and utilizing coping skills to help us. And what this does is it helps to create a new stability. And this stability helps to decrease our stress. And the idea is we stay in this cycle. Okay, so I put this up because I really want to emphasize the importance of change. With all of the change that has occurred, it really does require us to change our ways. And whatever word you want to use to describe change is really up to you, whether it's about being flexible, modifying, or making adjustments. At the core, it's about changing in order to do the best that you can. And here I included a little comic strip by Calvin and Hobbes, and it's talking about transmogrify. And what transmogrify means is sort of a kind of a magical kind of change. And in this strip, you can see Calvin here, he's trying to convince Hobbes to be transmogrified. And Hobbes is saying, basically saying that he's already an expert at being a tiger, so he doesn't need to change. So Calvin lays it on thick and he really tries to sell it. And eventually Hobbes says very sarcastically, well, gosh, how can I refuse? And the point of why I put this up and why I thought this cartoon was appropriate is actually this last line here by Calvin, which is him saying, well, if you don't like that, be something else. I don't care. And that's really the point I want to get across about changing, is if you don't like something or if something isn't working out, you can change. Change until you find something that works for you. Okay, so let's talk about how we can manage our anxiety and stress. So the first step really is to identify the stress and to know how you respond to stress. Think of it as knowledge is power. The more you know, the more you can contain and control your response, because identifying stress allows you to actively respond to it. So if you don't know you're stressed, you're not going to respond to it. So think of when I mentioned anxiety and panic attacks. A lot of times you don't know that you're stressed, or even if you know you're stressed, but you're pushing it away, you just don't want to deal with it, and you're hoping it'll just magically disappear. It doesn't. It'll eventually come out. And if you're not aware of it and you're not ready to respond, you won't be prepared. If you're unsure how you respond to stress, you can compare how you feel now to a time when you were feeling well and make note of that difference. Also keep in mind, you may have many different responses to stress depending on the type, the duration, and the intensity of the stressor. All right, so we're going to now build on this knowledge by taking control. While we can't control things that are happening around us, like the pandemic, we can control ourselves. So that just the knowledge that you have control can be soothing in itself. The goal is to acknowledge, not deny how you feel in order to contain it. Taking control allows you to make good decisions, because when our anxiety takes control, it's easy to feel overwhelmed and unsafe. So again, here, the goal is to keep our stress from growing. I also want to add that we do, however, need just a little bit of anxiety to motivate us to change, but it shouldn't be so much that we feel overwhelmed. Okay, so now building on knowledge and taking control, the next step is to take action. Here you can use your existing coping skills or learn new ones. There are many different ways to cope with stress. It's important to note that effective action and coping requires us to be flexible. There is not one right or wrong way. If you think about it, it's what's most important is if it works for you and it doesn't harm you. Let's take a moment just to go over unhealthy coping strategies. So unhealthy coping strategies don't make you feel stable. So it doesn't actually make you feel better in the moment. And it doesn't make you feel better over time. And when we're experiencing a lot of stress and a lot of hardship like we are now, we may really want to seek immediate relief. But unfortunately, many of these methods are ineffective and unhealthy. So if you're unsure if your coping skills are healthy or unhealthy, ask yourself, does your current coping make you feel stable or increasingly better over time? Or is it a quick fix that does not offer prolonged relief? So what happens with quick fixes, although they might be appealing sort of on the surface, is that here when we do the quick fix, eventually it wears off and then we crash. And then when we crash, we feel worse, which puts more pressure on us to seek that quick fix. And then we kind of get stuck in this cycle. I think most of you may be familiar with this, the notion of the quick fix, with the idea of either an activity or substance misuse, dependency, or addiction. And what I mean by activity could be anything from shopping, gambling, exercise, sex, and substances can include alcohol, drugs, cigarettes, or even food. Keep in mind, you don't have to have an addiction history to have a problem now. And actually, a recent study found that adults ages 30 and up have increased their alcohol consumption by 14% over the same time last year. So in other words, as a result of COVID. And adults between 30 and 59 actually increased their use by 19%. So that's a lot during this period of time. Now, activities and substances are not necessarily harmful in and of itself. So it's not that you can't have a glass of wine or go shopping. I think what's important to ask yourself is, why are you using it and do you need it? And if you say to yourself, I can't cope without it, if the answer is yes, this can become problematic because eventually you will need more of whatever you're using or doing to achieve the same effect. Without it, you'll feel worse and out of control. And this leads into a dependency on something that's outside of you. And when that happens, we lose our intrinsic or internal control. And right now, with so much outside of us that is out of our control, it really is important for us to harness what we can control, because this is our power and this is what can help soothe ourselves.
Excuse me, Dr. Kim. Someone just asked if you could reiterate what ETOH means.
Alcohol, I'm sorry. Apologize.
No worries, thank you.
Booze. Okay. Healthy coping strategies, on the other hand, make us feel stable and better over time. Now, there are many ways to, many healthy ways to cope. The goal is to find something that's effective, healthy, and pleasurable, because if you're not interested in it, you won't use it. Effective strategies give you some immediate relief and help strengthen your overall baseline. Again, so this is that prolonged relief, which I had mentioned. Healthy coping skills are flexible and they don't require you to be dependent on one method. It's good to have a variety of things you can choose from in case the thing you like to do isn't available. So for example, if you like to exercise and that's your only coping strategy, but you become injured, then you can't use it, you're left with nothing. So that's why it's good to have a variety of different things. I also want to mention that finding healthy strategies can take time. I don't expect this to happen overnight. Now, that doesn't mean that this should cause stress, because just the effort to find these strategies can be comforting in itself, because you're basically telling yourself and empowering yourself that you are taking action to find change. I think a lot of times we tend to focus on the end, sort of the end, what we're trying to get, and we forget the process, we forget the journey. The thing is, life in general is not about the end, it's about the journey, it's about living now. And I think the process of finding healthy strategies, and which I think can evolve over time, is a journey too. Just some general tips. Again, um, reinforcing that it's important to be flexible and make adjustments. Remember that all changes cause some kind of instability. So to regain instability, we have to change our ways. It helps to keep a routine or some kind of structure, whether it's new or old. And this is because it can help create a sense of purpose for ourselves. So in other words, a reason to wake up in the morning. It's important to seek connection and support from others. This helps to reinforce that you're not alone. And since a lot of us are spending a lot more time at home than we're used to, I think it's important to create a comfortable and relaxing space. So in other words, clean, not cluttered, and whatever would make it pleasing to you. Eating healthy is really, can be really important. I think a good tip would be to just be mindful of foods that don't make you feel good. And unfortunately, a lot of the comfort foods in the long run don't make us feel good, although they might taste very good in the moment. Maintaining a healthy sleep hygiene. And this is because sleep helps us to cope physically, mentally, and emotionally. Think of it as sort of recharging your battery. And without this, it makes functioning a lot more difficult, which adds a different kind of stress to ourselves. I think it's important to be kind, compassionate, and thankful, not just because it's a good thing to do, but actually we eventually start to feel the way we act. And lastly, just move. So even if you don't like to exercise, the goal would be to move more. The reason is that being sedentary can actually contribute to a low mood and increase your anxiety. So while I can't tell you specifically what coping strategies would work for you, again, it has to do with discovering what works for you, but also based on your interest. So that's something that's personal to you. But I thought I'd list some examples of coping strategies. So socialization, this can help prevent depression and can actually soothe our anxiety. Exercise, it is a great stress reliever, and note that just walking is good. Laughter, I think laughter is underrated, but laughter is really important because it has both emotional and physical benefits. It can boost your immune system. It can release endorphins, otherwise known as sort of the feel-good chemical. It can soothe muscle tension, and sort of as an added perk, it even burns calories. Distract but don't deny. So this is about not feeding the stress, but you want to contain it. And this is through whatever your interests are, whether it's listening to music, watching movies, cooking, whatever pleases you. And again, here I'm going to stress good sleep, because the lack of sleep causes more stress on our body. I've also noted an app that's free that can help you with sleep if anyone is interested. Pets, animals are wonderfully therapeutic. So if you have pets, that's wonderful. Learn something new. Now, I think there's been a lot of talk about learning something new during this time. But the reason for this is, one, it provides a distraction, and two, it also challenges your brain. So it keeps you going, it keeps you stimulated. Meditation, for those of you who like to meditate, it can help slow our mind and body down. Progressive muscle relaxation. This is great if you're feeling more tense than usual or having some aches and pains. This can really help to let go of the muscle tension. And breathing exercises. Like, there are a lot of different kinds of breathing exercises. out there. So if you have one that works for you, great, keep doing it. Breathing exercises overall help to slow our mind and body down. And I think now during COVID and with everything that's going on now, probably the most important thing I can tell you now is to limit your news media. It's important for us to stay informed. We need to know what's happening in our world, but not to be immersed. So in other words, listening to the same thing over and over and over again, which happens when you listen to the news long enough. Because if you do that, it's like feeding the stress, as I mentioned, and as mentally, it becomes too much. Okay. So what I thought I'd do now is walk you through one type of breathing exercise. And before we get started, I just want to go over a few things. When we breathe, it's really about breathing comfortably. And if you're working too hard, it is not going to feel good. And just to demonstrate, and I'm going to exaggerate, but if you're breathing and you're inhaling and you feel your shoulders going up, that's not relaxing. That causes tension. That's not the goal. The goal is just to breathe naturally in a rhythm that's comfortable for you. If you can breathe, inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth comfortably, you can do so. But certainly if you can't, it doesn't matter. For the purpose of what we're going to do, just breathe in a way that's comfortable for you. Okay, so what I'd like you to do right now is wherever you are, just to get comfortable, you're not going to have to look at anything, you're just going to listen. So get yourself situated. Okay, I'd like you to close your eyes and just focus on your breath as you inhale and exhale. All your attention is going to be focusing on your breath, feeling the air going in and the air going out, focusing on your breath, inhaling and exhaling to a comfortable point so it feels natural. As you focus on your breath, and focus as you exhale on the air going out, and just drop your shoulders, feeling the air going in and out. Pay attention to how your body feels as you take in the breath. The body knows how to breathe. Let it breathe naturally. And as you continue to focus on your breath, you'll notice the body will adjust to a rhythm that is soothing and comfortable for you. As you breathe in and exhale out. And as you continue to breathe, as you inhale, I'd like you to think of a comforting word to take in, such as calm, comfort, strength. And as you exhale, to think of something that you would like to remove, such as stress, fear, tension. So you're going to continue to breathe and inhale the comfort and exhale the stress. And inhale the comfort and exhale the stress. Noticing your shoulders drop and your breathing adjust to a rhythm that is soothing for you. Inhale the comfort and exhale the stress. You can also visualize taking in the comfort and releasing the stress as you breathe. Whatever works for you, whether it's imagining different colors or images or words. You're going to inhale the comfort and exhale the stress. And inhale the comfort and exhale the stress. And as you continue to breathe, I'd like you to shift your awareness and your surroundings. With your eyes closed, you feel the chair underneath you. Perhaps you're aware of the noises around you, giving it just the right amount of attention to be aware as you continue to breathe. Perhaps you become aware of the thoughts going through your mind or how your body temperature feels, the mind giving it just the amount of attention that it needs to be aware and allowing you to continue to breathe. Now I'd like you to shift again and focus on your breath as you inhale the comfort and exhale the stress, and inhale the comfort and exhale the stress. Take a few more breaths, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes. I hope that that was a good experience for you. And just keep in mind, this is one way that you can practice your breathing. I think as you continue to practice, what you'll notice is that your body will adjust itself to a rhythm that is soothing and comfortable for you. It's important to just keep practicing. And really the benefits of breathing are that it's free, it's flexible, you can do it anywhere and anytime. If you're having trouble breathing, which it is something that does occur, this is an app that you can use that's free. And what I like about this app is it visualizes the breath and you can set it to the pace that works for you. And then it will show you when to inhale and when to exhale. So this can help teach you to slow your breathing down. So keep in mind that when we shorten our breath, this sort of feeling, it actually makes us anxious. The reason for that is it creates this muscle tension and we feel like we can't breathe, which makes us anxious. So slowing your breathing down is actually very beneficial. Okay, so now let's shift over the idea of mind over matter. I think a lot of you probably heard of mind over matter before. And what I'm talking about here is how it works. And the way mind over matter works is by activating the thinking part of our brain. And if you look here, this red part here, this is the thinking part of our brain. It's called the prefrontal cortex, which is the wrinkly outer layer part of our frontal lobe. So it's right here. And this part of your brain, more than any other part, is the area that controls our personality, our goals, and our values. And during a crisis, which we're all living through now, we really want to activate the thinking part of our brain to override the emotional brain. So if we go back to the slide, if you see here, this pink part here, this is our emotional brain. It's also called the limbic brain or the limbic system. So again, we want this part, the red part, the thinking part, to take over this pink part, the emotional part. By doing this, by activating the thinking part of the brain, it helps us from, prevents us from feeding that stress. And by directing your brain's thoughts and actions, just that mere suggestion can activate this thinking part of the brain. Also, that thinking part, the prefrontal cortex, there's a part in it called the ventromedial prefrontal cortex that is associated with courage, suppression of negative emotions, and compassion. And I don't know about you, but these are all things that I definitely could use more of right now. Okay, so how do we activate the thinking part of our brain? So the approach you would use is one, to identify what the emotional brain is thinking. And you only want to spend enough time there to achieve awareness. So an example of this could be, life is not normal, which makes me anxious. So then we're going to respond to this by activating the thinking brain. And the activation, you're going to focus on an action, and it's something in the affirmative. So in this example, you could say something like, I can adapt to situations and feel more relaxed and calm. Or I will focus on what I can control and what I can do to feel calm. The most important thing to do is to persevere. The more you do this, the old unwanted thoughts are going to fight harder for attention. But if you keep it up, they'll actually eventually subside. Think of it as like building a new muscle. In order to build a new muscle, repetition is the key. And this operates in the same way. So just don't give up. Here are a few more examples of the activating the thinking part of the brain. So if the thought is, I'm terrified I'll get sick, you can say something like, I will protect myself by wearing a mask, social distancing, washing my hands. Another example, I feel lonely with the social isolation. You can counteract that with, I will call, and then fill in the blank, so I'm not alone. And the last example, I'm too anxious, I can't handle it. You would counteract this with, I can handle it, I have overcome hardships in the past, I will, and then fill in the blank what you're going to do. So just sort of an overview, the key points of what I really want to stress today is that emotional responses to stress, it's normal and expected. Change, like all the changes that we've experienced in 2020, creates instability and therefore stress. So all of this change requires us to change in order to regain stability, and that flexibility here is a must. Remember that knowledge helps us to take effective control and action, which is used to help ourselves. Constant focus on anxiety and helplessness only feeds the stress, which is what we don't want to do. And the mind is powerful, and it can be activated to soothe our emotions. Seek and use healthy coping skills that are effective, healthy, and pleasurable for you. And have several coping strategies that you can use from and choose if the one you like the most isn't available. Seek support from friends, family, and professionals. Don't give up. And most importantly, you are all more resilient than you think. That's really important. And I think we've seen this a lot. You can just think of all of the first responders and the doctors not knowing what was going on, and they dug deep and they found out that they could get through this. And I think we all have that capacity within us. So thank you, everyone. That's really what I wanted to say. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.